Welcome to HFY Sci-Fi Stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Fate, with its cruel humor, had christened the galaxy's most terrifying hunters, the Vorak. Not for their reputation as apex predators, but because their name sounded like a gargling nightmare. This linguistic mishap did nothing to lessen their image as killers, viewing other species as little more than snacks. Towering at nearly 10 feet, bristling with natural weaponry, and subscribing to a philosophy of immediate and complete annihilation, the Vorak were a force. Their homeworld, Cruxtel, was predator-free, as the Vorak had devoured them millennia ago, then turned on each other for sport. This twisted game surprisingly aided galactic balance, keeping their numbers in check while ensuring any survivor was utterly lethal. What made the Vorak uniquely frightening was their utter lack of understanding regarding why others were terrified. To them, the constant threat of violence was simply polite interaction. Diplomacy was met with displays of severed limbs. The Galactic Commerce Federation poured resources into Vorak interaction protocols, primarily run and hide. Trade was conducted by heavily armed intermediaries, and insurance companies offered new policies. Into this precarious dance of terror and trade, the universe placed Kepler's Mistake, a mining station so insignificant it was barely a blip on the star charts. Home to a motley crew, the station was the dumping ground for the galaxy's forgotten, its purpose to rehabilitate, or at least, provide a tomb. Kelix Thorne, a mechanical engineer, arrived 6 months earlier, brimming with ingenuity and avoiding any talk of her past. Her workshop, a monument to making the impossible work with sheer grit and duct tape, was about to be tested in ways she never imagined. Today, the universe's irony took the form of a near-dead Vorak, sprawled across a maintenance corridor. Over 8 feet of muscle, leaking fluids onto the deck, his hide seared by plasma burns. His breath was labored, a desperate struggle for survival. He lay twisted, limbs askew at angles that defied basic anatomy. His tail, once a fearsome weapon and vital communicator, now twitched faintly. Any sane person would have fled, alerting security from a safe distance. Voraks weren't known for kindness. A wounded one was exponentially more dangerous, their pain igniting legendary rages. But Kelix wasn't known for sanity. Compelled, she knelt, mentally inventorying her meager supplies, industrial adhesives, cable ties, and a first aid kit from a forgotten era. The Vorax's alien eyes, glazed with pain, tracked her, struggling to focus. "Well," she murmured, unzipping her tool bag. "This is either incredibly brave or utterly stupid. Probably both." Plasma burns were her immediate worry, oozing a cocktail of unnerving fluids never meant for the outside world. Kelix assessed the wounds with detached professionalism, years spent fixing the impossible hardening her. The burns had scabbed, but not closed, gaping wounds needing immediate attention. Duct tape, she decided, was humanity's crowning achievement. It had conquered the impossible for centuries. If it sealed spacecraft in the vacuum, it could staunch a Vorax from bleeding to death. Methodically, she applied the tape, her actions precise, almost reverent. The Vorax watched, mesmerized, witnessing a reality-bending event. His species knew no medical care, only the mercy of a swift death by consumption. This bizarre application of adhesive was incomprehensible. "Hold still," Kelix instructed, pressing a stubborn edge. "This will feel odd, but it should help." She doubted he understood, but a professional demeanor was crucial, even now. Cable ties secured the broken arm, requiring what Kelix internally termed aggressive physiotherapy to realign the bone. The Vorax's tolerance was remarkable, but his low growls betrayed even his limits. She crafted a makeshift splint, unorthodox yet structurally sound. "There," she announced, admiring her work. "You look like you were mugged by an office supply store, but you're no longer dying. I call that a win." The Vorax tried to rise, then thought better, the industrial adhesives holding him hostage. His eyes, however, burned into Kelix, a stark reminder that she was alone in a corridor with a creature who, even crippled, could tear her apart. "So," she blurted, nervous chatter her defaulteth in deadly situations. "I imagine plasma burns aren't typically treated with duct tape where you're from. It's unconventional, but trust me, this stuff fixes everything. I once repaired a warp core with it, so a few holes are manageable." The Vorax emitted a sound, communication, or respiratory distress. Kelix optimistically interpreted it as gratitude. The twitching had ceased. Stabilization, she hoped, not the harbinger of some alien demise. 20 minutes later, She had transformed a near-dead predator into what resembled abstract art titled Industrial First Aid. The silver tape gleamed against his hide, oddly beautiful. The cable ties formed geometric patterns, lending the ensemble a surreal symmetry. A technological sheen, almost deliberate if she squinted. Zixth Thor, a veteran of ritual combat, territorial skirmishes, and one accidental mind-altering fruit, found himself reeling. He was healed by what his people deemed emergency rations, now displaying a disconcerting sentience. Before him stood the little being, chattering in its language, oblivious to the miracle it had wrought. The silvery substance adorning his hide staunched the bleeding, eased his pain, and promoted healing in ways defying Vorak biology. Such medical prowess should have demanded a master healer, elaborate rituals, and possibly sacrifice. Instead, he was repaired by a creature barely reaching his midsection, using what appeared to be basic industrial supplies. The philosophical implications were staggering. Vorak culture hinged on cold, hard logic. Strength survived, weakness perished, and medical care assessed a warrior's ability to fight. Helping a wounded enemy was unimaginable, their language lacking words for charity or altruism. Yet here he was, alive and healing, thanks to a creature he could have crushed, even in his weakened state. This human, seeing him dying, chose to help. Against all Vorak logic, it was akin to teaching a black hole ballet. "Can you understand me?" the human inquired, crouching down in a gesture he found oddly endearing. Zixth managed a careful nod, sending interesting tingles through his wounds. The human's face lit up, a display his culture deemed pleasure. "Great," she exclaimed. "My name is Kelix. I work in maintenance. I fix things." She paused, then added, "I guess that includes you now. Are you going to be okay? I think you will, but I've never done this before." The thought of being fixed by a maintenance worker was another layer of absurdity to the situation. Zixth's brain emitted a flood of philosophical error messages. "My designation is Zixth Thu," he managed, his voice carrying formal tones. "I am grateful for your intervention." The words felt foreign, as the closest equivalent meant disappointed not to have died gloriously in battle. Kelix beamed. "Nice to meet you, Zixthul. Impressive name. So what happened? Professional curiosity." Zixth now found himself explaining his culture. "I was engaged in territorial resolution." "Fighting over real estate, that's pretty universal," Kelix said, nodding, as if it were the most ordinary thing in the world. Across the cosmos, every species appears plagued by property disputes. Rarely, however, do these feuds involve quite so many plasma blasts. The recent engagement, unfortunately, ended rather unfavorably. Zixjul continued, a strange solace found in his own euphemistic phrasing. "I sustained grievous battle damage and was forced to retreat. My vessel's navigation systems were critically compromised, leading to this unscheduled arrival at your facility." Kelix finished for him, her voice dry. "And then you crawled down here to quietly die." She considered this, a peculiar respect entering her gaze. Actually, that's somewhat dignified. Awful, yes, but dignified in a warrior's stoic way. She rose, brushing faint dust from her work coveralls. "Good news, you're not dying anymore. Bad news, you'll likely be grounded here for a while. Those plasma burns demand time to mend, and you shouldn't jostle them until the duct tape truly adheres to your tissue." The very notion of relying on this peculiar creature's ongoing kindness was a concept Zixjul's deeply ingrained worldview struggled immensely to grasp. In his culture, debts were settled instantly and definitively, typically through brutal combat or solemn ritual exchange. Prolonged obligation was seen as a social poison, subtly eroding the essential bonds of proper society. "I must offer reparation for your assistance," he stated, meticulously attempting to navigate this unprecedented social scenario by applying basic principles of courtesy. "My people highly value the swift clearing of all debts. What might constitute appropriate recompense for the restoration of my very life?" Kelix looked genuinely bewildered by the query. "Payment? I don't need any payment. You were hurt. I simply helped. That's just, normal human behavior. Basic decency. The kind of thing people naturally do." She paused, a dawning comprehension slowly filling her expression, as if realizing her assumptions about universal moral standards might need radical reassessment. "Your people don't typically aid each other when injured." "No," Zixjul replied with unvarnished honesty. "Customarily, we first ascertain if the injured individual can still contribute to the clan's strength. If not, We then respectfully consume them to prevent resource waste and to honor their contribution to collective survival. The expression that contorted Kellix's face was one Zixjul had never witnessed before, though he strongly suspected it was what humans called horror. Director Vance Holbrook had tirelessly managed Kepler's glaring mistake for 7 long years, a duration approximately 6 years and 11 months beyond the typical lifespan of administrative personnel at facilities of this particular volatile caliber. He had achieved this remarkable longevity through a shrewd blend of flexible ethical standards, diligent pharmaceutical assistance, and the pragmatic philosophy that most problems would eventually resolve themselves if only ignored with sufficient, resolute determination. This cunning approach had served him remarkably well through persistent equipment failures, endless personnel disputes, and even the occasional localized insurrection. Yet none of these turbulent experiences had adequately prepared him for the overwhelming communications traffic now utterly inundating his command center, much like a digital tsunami of truly apocalyptic scale. "Director," his communications officer announced, her tone chillingly hollow, like someone who had recently endured profound spiritual trauma. "We're receiving another immense wave of incoming transmissions. 17 more Vorfak vessels have entered the system just in the last hour. They're requesting docking permission for what they're calling religious pilgrimage purposes." Holbrook simply stared at the tactical display, which now eerily resembled a particularly aggressive outbreak of electronic acne. Each vibrant red dot represented a Vorfak warship, and there were now 43 of them, meticulously arranged in what appeared to be a worshipful formation around his small, unassuming mining station. The vessels varied wildly, from nimble single-pilot fighters to colossal clan ships capable of comfortably housing the populace of a small city, all seemingly united in their inexplicable desire to visit what he had always considered the galaxy's least religiously significant location. "Remind me," he murmured, instinctively reaching for the meditation that provided his only respite from the more surreal aspects of station management. "How exactly did we become a holy site? Just last week our biggest headache was a malfunctioning coffee synthesizer, and now we're apparently hosting the largest gathering of apex predators in all recorded history. It began when maintenance worker Thorne rescued that injured Vorfak in Sector 7, the communications officer patiently explained, consulting her notes with the meticulous care of someone handling unstable explosives. According to our latest intelligence briefings, she used duct tape and cable ties to treat his plasma burns. The Vorfak have interpreted this as conclusive evidence of divine medical intervention." Holbrook felt his left eye begin its telltale twitch, which was invariably the first indicator that his day was about to become significantly, irrevocably more complicated. "They think our maintenance worker is a deity because she performed first aid with office supplies." "Not precisely, sir. They firmly believe she possesses sacred knowledge of something they're reverently calling the Silver Healing Web. A preliminary linguistic analysis suggests they've developed an entire..." A bizarre situation unfolded. Thorne, revered as the wound binder and keeper of sacred healing, became the center of the Vorak's religious fervor. While the director pondered his insurance coverage for a potential mental collapse, he couldn't deny the evidence. Duct tape, a simple household item, had become a divine gift, sparking unparalleled reverence. Another Vorak ship, adorned in ritualistic silver and bearing prayers, approached the station like a holy procession. Security. Paradoxically, it was perfect. The station was declared a sacred sanctuary, protected by the galaxy's most fearsome predators, now serving as unpaid guards. The irony, profound. And Thorne, she was thriving, leading workshops on medical techniques, sacred ceremonies to the Vorak, cable management, preventative maintenance. Their maintenance department had accidentally become an academy for apex predators. The communications board overflowed with requests, the tactical display transforming into a religious gathering. The Galactic Commerce Federation, the Interspecies Medical Council, and countless news organizations all inquired. Domesticate? He hadn't. He accidentally convinced the galaxy's most dangerous that duct tape was a relic, his employee, a prophet. Prepare a press statement? He had to sound somewhat sane and check if his insurance covered acts of accidental divinity. Watching another Vorak vessel approach, its hull shimmering with promise, he knew this was unprecedented. Down below, Kellix Thorne, unaware, was explaining electrical tape, fundamentally shifting power dynamics. Maintenance Bay 7, now the Sacred Workshop, had organically transformed into a cargo cult worship service, protected by her fascinated disciples. Kodak had painstakingly arranged the workshop tools for 3 cycles. coaxing them into patterns, whispered to resonate with maintenance's sacred geometry. She half suspected it was elaborate play acting, yet they arranged her instruments in ways that truly impressed. Her workbench, now a hallowed altar, stood elevated on salvaged deck plating, adorned with duct tape mandalas of intricate beauty. "The sacred silver web demands reverence," Zixth Thu proclaimed to awestruck newcomers, his voice resonating with the conviction of one touched by divinity. His own duct tape bandages had bloomed into ceremonial vestments, adorned with purely decorative patterns, transcending mere medical function with mystical grandeur. Kelix watched, mesmerized, witnessing a faith take root. The Vorak had transmuted her pragmatic wound care into a rich theological tapestry, resonating profoundly with their warrior ethos. 17 distinct sacred applications of adhesive tape had been identified, each imbued with ritual significance and traditional blessings. "We now witness the holy ritual of cable communion," intoned Grathor, a clan leader, his ship brimming with wounded warriors seeking divine mending, arriving 2 days prior. He gestured in reverence toward Kelix's long-neglected snarl of power cables. "The woundbinder shall unveil the sacred art of ordering chaos." Kelix understood resistance was futile against such religious fervor. The Vorak, with earnest politeness, dismissed her explanations of duct tape's mundane adhesive properties. They perceived her humility as befitting one divinely blessed, deepening their reverence and profound devotion. "Right," she acquiesced, picking up cable ties. "Organization is key to cable communion. Group-related systems for ease of access and future veneration." As she bundled cables with practiced grace, her audience perceived cosmic principles unfolding. The Vorak watched with the rapt concentration of scholars poring over holy texts, having developed a mythology around binding, a fundamental force of cosmic order. To them, Kelix's mastery over tangled systems represented mastery over chaos itself, explaining her miraculous healing. "Observe," whispered Krixval, a warrior priest, scribbling furiously. "She harmonizes energy's chaotic flow. These sacred ties bind not just cables, but the very spiritual energies that course through them. This is the source of healing, the silver web's ability to mend flesh and organize matter." Kelix secured the last bundle, stepping back after 10 minutes of routine work. The Vorak erupted in their traditional hymn of religious rapture, a low harmonic hum like starships awakening. "Divine order is restored," Rexthor declared solemnly. "Let all witness the power of the sacred bindings." The ceremony halted with the arrival of Thesiac, a colossal warrior bearing a carefully swaddled bundle. He approached Kelix with shrine-like reverence, movement slow and deliberate. "Sacred binder," he uttered, his voice thick with profound religious awe. "I bring offering from my clan. We have journeyed far to witness the mysteries and seek healing for our youngest warrior." The bundle revealed a Vorthak juvenile, a teenager by human standards, injured in a coming-of-age ritual. The wounds were minor for a Vorak, yet the youth bravely suppressed the pain before the assembled warriors. "Please," Thesiac continued, "work the sacred healing upon my clan child. We offer rare metals and battle songs in tribute of your divine intervention." Kelix gazed at the injured juvenile, feeling the familiar stirring of compassion that had precipitated this situation. The cuts would heal unaided, but she could alleviate pain and accelerate recovery with basic first aid. That her audience would interpret this as a divine intervention was something she had simply come to accept. No tribute was needed, she stated, reaching for her medical kit. "Let's assess the damage." The 20-minute healing process involved 3 strips of duct tape, 2 cable ties, and what Kelix privately deemed tenacious optimism in anatomical engineering. The young one endured the procedure with quiet fortitude, though his eyes widened significantly as the sacred silver web's touch soothed his pain. "The divine healing is complete," Grathor proclaimed as Kelix finished her work. "Let songs of gratitude ascend to honor the binder of wounds." The resulting chorus of Vorak war songs, praising medical tape, was perhaps the most surreal moment in Kelix's career, a career punctuated by genuinely peculiar encounters with malfunctioning gear. The harmonies rattled dust from the overhead fixtures and sent sympathetic tremors through the metal deck plating, likely necessitating structural checks. "You know," she commented to Zixthul as the singing peaked, "this wasn't precisely what I envisioned when I entered maintenance." "The divine rarely communicates through conventional channels," he responded with the philosophical calm of one whose worldview had been fundamentally reshaped by adhesive tape. "Perhaps this was your preordained path, sacred binder. Perhaps the universe guided you to this very moment through fate's intricate design." Kellex surveyed the transformed maintenance bay, now filled with reverent apex predators celebrating the mystical power of hardware store supplies, and concluded that the universe possessed a distinct sense of humor. Whether it was a good sense of humor remained to be seen. The theological evolution of duct tape worship had reached a complexity that would have impressed comparative religion scholars, assuming they had the fortitude to study a faith system that revered industrial adhesive as sacred material and featured apex predators. The Vorak had meticulously constructed an entire ecclesiastical hierarchy based on their interpretation of humanity's divine maintenance wisdom, complete with ceremonial ranks, ritualistic practices, and what appeared to be the galaxy's inaugural religion, centered around hardware store inventory. Kellex's workshop had been expanded to accommodate the burgeoning congregation, with additional bays repurposed as what the Vorak termed temples of applied healing. Each space was meticulously arranged according to principles that fused practical maintenance protocols with mystical geometry, fostering environments that were both functionally efficient and spiritually awe-inspiring. The walls were adorned with intricate patterns crafted from various tape grades, arranged in designs that purportedly represented the fundamental forces of universal repair. Today, we delve into the advanced mysteries of waterproof sealing, declared High Technician Vraul, elected chief interpreter of Kellex's teachings. His ceremonial regalia was intricately woven from an assortment of tapes and cable management materials, resulting in an ensemble that was both preposterous and strangely dignified. The sacred binder will illuminate the divine principles of leak prevention. The congregation, numbering nearly 300 Vorth warriors, arranged themselves in precise rows, their focus fixed on their colleagues with the intensity of theological students grappling with foundational truths. They had brought offerings of rare metals, exotic weaponry, and artistic creations that lauded the mystical properties of adhesive repair techniques. The growing accumulation of tribute was beginning to strain the station's already limited cargo capacity. Alex had learned to embrace the theatrical elements of her unintentional priesthood, partly due to the futility of resistance, and partly because she discovered a genuine reward in imparting practical skills to an eager audience. The fact that her students interpreted her lessons as divine revelation was simply one of those occupational hazards nobody had prepared her for in engineering school. The key to effective waterproofing, she explained, holding up a roll of specialized tape, is understanding the interplay between surface preparation and adhesive application. You cannot simply adhere tape to a problem and hope for the best. One must meticulously clean the area, ensure optimal bonding conditions, and apply the material thoughtfully, accounting for stress distribution and thermal expansion. The Vorak absorbed this knowledge with rapt attention, many diligently taking notes in their own script. They had devised an elaborate lexicon that elevated commonplace maintenance procedures into sacred arts. Surface preparation had been redefined as the purification of the sacred interface, while thermal expansion was now referred to as the divine respiration of matter. "Observe the sacred binder's power to cleanse metal before the healing web descends," intoned Kethar, the warrior monk ordained chronicler of these divine practices. She speaks the tongue of matter, the secrets understood only by the truly enlightened. The demonstration unfolded beautifully until Kellex arrived at the pivotal moment, demonstrating precise pressure application. This meant pressing firmly, expelling every trace of air, a gesture the Vorak revered as profound spiritual communion with the adhesive itself. "The sacred binder whispers to the silver web in the ancient language of touch," Rexwell proclaimed to the eager assembly. "Through her blessed hands flows the binding force, uniting sacred material with raw matter in eternal harmony." Kellex had long ceased to correct their interpretations. The Vorak's fervent theological zeal amplified their practical learning beyond any conventional program. Their reverence for the technique ensured an almost obsessive attention to detail, yielding surprisingly exceptional repairs, once past their esoteric jargon. "Now," she announced, "let's practice on sample materials. Remember, even pressure is key. Banish every bubble but avoid excessive force that harms the surface beneath." What followed was less a lesson, more a meditation embraced by heavily armed predators. The Vorak approached the task with the intense focus befitting holy rites. Their normally fierce demeanor gave way to profound respect for the waterproof tape's mystical properties. "The divine material answers my touch," marveled KX4, a clan champion who braved 6 star systems for this sacred knowledge. "I feel the binding force coursing through the silver web, forging unity from separation." "That's just the adhesive," Kellex began, then caught herself. "I mean, yes, you're achieving unity. Precisely what we strive for." The session was shattered by the arrival of Stool, an elder Verk, their culture's esteemed traditional healer. He entered with a burdened dignity, bearing his primitive instruments, his worldview clearly shaken. "Sacred Binder," he declared, his voice ringing with significance. "I offer my service to the divine healing arts. For 60 years, I wielded the crude old ways of warrior medicine. Now, I see the sacred mysteries you teach transcend my practices. Grant me, an unworthy student, the true path to healing." Such an offer defied Vorak custom. Traditional healers held positions of unrivaled respect. For one to seek guidance from an outsider was nearly unthinkable. The assembly watched, hushed, bearing witness to history. Kellic surveyed his tools: bone saws, crude cauterization devices, implements best left unexamined. The contrast with her tape and cable ties was comedic, were it not for the utter solemnity of her audience. "Anyone can learn," she said diplomatically. "Healing principles are universal. We adapt the techniques to what you already know." The workshop erupted in harmonic appreciation, the standard Vorak response to perceived divine wisdom. Stool knelt before Kellic's workbench, a gesture alien to their society, where respect was shown through combat, not submission. "I dedicate my remaining years to the sacred art," he proclaimed. "Let the old ways be forgotten. The silver web shall guide my hands in restoring the wounded." Kellic realized she was witnessing a species' complete medical transformation, all because she couldn't bear to ignore a dying creature. The implications were staggering, especially considering her divine wisdom stemmed from basic first aid and hardware store supplies. 6 months after what historians would later call the Great Patching, Kel Thorne stood within what was once Maintenance Bay 7. She surveyed the colossal domain of strange outcomes her kindness had unintentionally wrought. This place now functioned as the supreme sanctuary of what the Vorthek revered as the holy craft of practical repair, complete with hallowed spots for various tapes and quiet rooms where fighters honed the sacred discipline of cord organization. This change had rippled far beyond the bounds of Kepler's unintended consequence. Vorak tribes across 17 star systems had begun weaving hallowed upkeep practices into their ancient traditions, elevating simple repair tasks to acts of worship. Daily, reports surfaced of Vorak starships where crews performed elaborate dedication rituals before mundane repairs, and warrior communities where strong tape held greater esteem than customary armaments. "The sacred binders are ready," Zixthal proclaimed, now adorned in the official vestments of the Divine Order's chief engineer. "Morning services are prepared. 347 hopefuls await your wisdom in the advanced secrets of electrical protection." Kellic had long since ceased resisting the surging wave of spiritual fervor that accompanied her daily routines. The Vorak, she discovered, were remarkably gifted students of practical mechanics once she learned to infuse her teachings with appropriately sacred phrasing. Their vessels now boasted maintenance standards, surpassing even galactic fleet requirements, and their healing methods had evolved from crude practices to sophisticated wound care, employing specialized tape applications. "Inform them I shall be there shortly," she stated, adjusting the ceremonial belt, a creation of rare metals and sanctified adhesive materials, fashioned for her by the Vortak. "I must first finalize the supply orders." The requisitions had become a constant source of astonishment for Director Holbrook, who observed his humble mining outpost now requesting industrial volumes of strong tape, securing ties, and diverse upkeep provisions. The Vorak insisted on compensating for these materials with tribute shipments of valuable ores, transforming Kepler's oversight into one of the sector's most prosperous locations, solely through the economic might of fervent devotion. "This morning's quarterly tribute from the Crix clan has arrived," Zaxtool reported, presenting 17 tons of rare earth elements and a collection of traditional war chants glorifying the divine strength of weatherproof sealing. "They're requesting an advanced course in the sacred art of connecting pipes." Kellic offered a distracted nod, mentally tallying the material needs for her next demonstration. The Vorak's eagerness to learn had unexpectedly sparked a secondary career in technical instruction, though she suspected no other educator in the galaxy's history had taught pipe joining to an assembly that viewed every connection as a profound mystery. "Have you considered extending the sacred order to other peoples?" Zixthu inquired, his tone cautious, as if broaching a delicate spiritual matter. "Several alien delegations have expressed keen interest in mastering the divine maintenance arts. The Crystalline Collective finds the notion of repair methods based on adhesion particularly compelling." The suggestion was hardly surprising. News of the Vork transformation had disseminated throughout the galactic populace, igniting intense curiosity regarding humanity's apparent capacity to tame apex predators through the judicious use of common hardware store items. Xenopsychologists struggled to comprehend how elementary first aid had ignited a spiritual awakening that fundamentally reshaped one of the galaxy's most ferocious cultures. "We could likely arrange some introductory sessions," Kellex conceded, privately pondering whether other species would embrace the mystical power of strong tape as readily as the Vorak had. "Though I imagine the spiritual doctrine might require some adaptation for non-warrior societies," Zixul countered with the unthinking certainty of one whose conviction was unburdened by practicalities. "The hallowed principles of proper upkeep transcend all species." Through the workshop's viewport, Kellex glimpsed the newest contingent of pilgrims arriving at the station's docking bays. Their ships bore the insignia of clans from across Vorak territory, their exteriors adorned with ritualistic patterns crafted from various tapes. Each craft represented warriors who had journeyed immense distances to acquire the sacred skills of practical engineering from humanity's accidental benefactor of diligent maintenance. The irony was so deep, it had blossomed into a form of cosmic beauty. The galaxy's most dreaded creatures had been remade into fervent pupils of technical learning because one individual could not pass a suffering being without offering aid. The universe's most lethal species now considered duct, a roll of tape, now a holy relic, and rudimentary first aid, now divine revelation, rested before her. "Sacred binder," Zix murmured reverently. "The faithful stir, eager to absorb your profound insights into the enigma of electrical insulation." Kellex gazed at her transformed workshop, now a sanctuary filled with the implements of everyday repair, unexpectedly elevated to the cornerstone of an interstellar faith. In the distance, the Vorak warriors chanted, their voices a harmonious chorus reciting the hallowed principles of grounding, a testament to lives forever changed by the gospel of basic engineering. "All right," Kellex said, adjusting her ceremonial tool belt, steeling herself to address the apex predators hanging on her every syllable of electrical safety. "Let us now enlighten these warriors on the sacred art of power coupling insulation. The universe must be properly maintained, after all." As she walked towards the cathedral, once just a simple maintenance bay, Kellex pondered the bizarre tapestry of fate. This morning, she'd set out to fix a hydroponic system, and now she was the accidental prophet of a religion glorifying the divine attributes of industrial adhesive. The universe possessed a sense of humor too immense to grasp. Behind her, the sacred workshop buzzed with activity. These beings had found redemption in the ordinary, and miracles in having the right supplies and the desire to aid. The galaxy was forever altered. Humanity shared its greatest truth with the cosmos, that anything is repairable with enough grit, ingenuity, and a healthy supply of duct tape. The universe, as always, proved stranger and more beautiful than any could have dreamed.